Good evening. It's Friday night. It's just gone 9:30. It's the 30th of October, and I'm here tonight to report on the proceedings today in the High Court in relation to the Strokestown eviction. But before I begin, can I put a call out to anybody that has technical skills like videography or editing or so on? Can you please go to the Irish Inquiry website? There's a drop-down box, help us, and you can enter your details there. As I said, there was a High Court hearing today in relation to the Strokestown eviction. I was present in the court and I'm going to report on today's proceedings, and then I'm going to chat to Margaret Hanrahan, who joins me. Margaret is from County Tipperary. She has battled for many years with ACC Bank. Some of you may have watched my interview with her a couple of weeks ago. Margaret rode a number of horses all the way to Dublin, to the front gates of Leinster House, to raise the issue of what was actually happening to her in relation to ACC Bank. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us tonight, Margaret.
Thank you, Anna.
Okay,
Thank you.
So I'll begin by reporting on what happened today, and by way of introduction, or to give you some background information to today's court hearing. Last Friday, the three McGanns were arrested in two separate arrests, taken to Castlereagh Garda Station. From there, they were taken in a paddy wagon to Dublin. They appeared before Judge Reynolds. They were issued with an ultimatum of either vacating their home or facing jail for contempt of court. And they agreed to leave their home. They were given until 10 o'clock Friday night to vacate the property. And many of you will have watched my live interview last Friday night with Donal Hanley and with Colm Granahan, and we reported on what actually happened. And then the following night, Saturday night, I did a live with Colm Granahan, and we reported how Geraldine and David McGann finally vacated the property at 12:30. It was pouring out of the heavens, extremely windy. David went out to say goodbye to his cats. He was absolutely soaked to the skin and crying. Himself and Geraldine then got in the car and they drove out the gate. And that was the last that anybody saw of them. And I was unable to make contact with them. On Saturday, I phoned Geraldine. She didn't answer her phone. I left a message, just a short message, assuring her that she was in my thoughts and prayers, and if she needed me to call me. She didn't respond to that. And I was in contact with two other people, and they were also very concerned that they were unable to make contact with the McGanns. And one of those people said that, particularly in the case of Anthony, if he didn't answer his phone, he'd always get back to you. Nobody was able to make contact with them, and we were really, really, really concerned about them. There was a High Court hearing or mention then on Tuesday at 10:30, and I attended that. Now, I didn't report on that, or I didn't mention that on social media, because I believed that the matter was highly sensitive, and I didn't want to say or do anything that would be in contempt of court. I arrived in the court at around 10:20, and at 10:30, a gentleman walked up to the court register. He handed her an envelope, and he said that that was from the McGanns. And he said he couldn't give any further details, that he was just asked to hand that in. And I was so relieved, because that was my first time then to know that they were in fact okay. Then it was a hearing, a remote hearing. So there was nobody present in court 3, only myself, the registrar and the court usher. And I was able to hear the proceedings coming out over the loudspeaker. And it was said by counsel for KBC Bank that the solicitor that had come on record to represent the McGanns on Friday had been unable to make contact with him over the weekend. He said that the bank would be seeking to secure the property before Friday, and that they would try to get word to the McGanns that the case was up for mention on Friday, which was today. So I travelled to Dublin today. I was the first into court 3, and then a court official came in and directed me where to sit, and he said that there was only 17 people going to be allowed into court, and I may be asked to leave. And I explained to him that I was a journalist, and he directed me then where I could go in the event of there being more than 17 people in the court. Counsel for the bank arrived with Aidan Devlin, and then Judge Reynolds then appeared on the bench, and Rossa Fanning, counsel for KBC Bank, said that the solicitors acting for the McGanns had been unable to make contact with them. And he said that there was a lady present in the court that he believed knew where they were. And the judge asked him who that was, and he named me. He said Anna Kavanagh, and he pointed out to where I was sitting. And I put up my hand, and I told Judge Reynolds that I wanted to put on the court record that I had absolutely no idea where the McGanns are, and what's more, the people that I'm in contact with, they have no idea where they are. She then asked me where I lived. I told her I lived in Longford. She said that I was in breach. I could be in breach of the COVID restrictions, that I had travelled more than 5 kilometres beyond my home, and I said that I was a journalist, and the regulations state that I am allowed freedom of movement. So I showed her my card, and she directed the court usher to bring her up the card, my NUJ card, and then she asked me who I worked for. I told her that I was a freelance journalist, and she said, so I take it then you're here for work? And I said, yes, I am. And that was the end of the matter. Counsel for KBC then, Rossa Fanning, proceeded to speak about the activity on social media over the weekend, and a conversation then ensued between himself and Judge Reynolds. And I felt that the social media aspect of it, why was this brought up? You know, was this a kind of alluding to the fact that I had been on social media over the weekend? I don't know. What I do know is that there has been an attempt to, and I'm not saying where this is coming from, and I'm not accusing anybody that was present in the court today, but there has been an attempt to control the narrative around the story of what actually happened in Strokestown. And to that end, Emmett Corcoran, a journalist, had his phone confiscated by the Gardaí. Well, I won't say it was confiscated. He was, I'll just take a little drink. You may recall that Emmett recorded the footage on the 18th of December, where following the removal of the men from the house and the vans were burning, and that media footage that Emmet recorded was actually used by RTE and all of the mainstream media outlets. Emmet was subsequently brought into the Garda station for questioning, and then some weeks later, the guards then arrived at his home, and they said that there was a search warrant for his home, or alternatively he could hand over his phone. And Emmet handed over his phone, and then there followed a High Court case over whether or not the Gardaí had the authority to search his phone. Now, just as a background to this, journalists have what's called privilege. And that the media and journalists have a very, very important function in a democracy. Their function is to hold power to account. And people will come to journalists and they will tell them things that are going wrong. And it is a principle that the journalist does not have to divulge their sources. It's a bit like the priest in the confession box. And that's to safeguard people, that when somebody comes to a journalist and tells them something, or they phone a journalist and they communicate with them by email or whatever, that person feels assured that that's not going to go anyplace. It's going to be, the journalist will hold on to that information and won't divulge the source of their information. So it's a very, very, very important point of law. Anyhow, in the case of Emmet, that the outcome of the High Court hearing this year was that the judge, or the Gardaí, did have the authority to search through his phone. Now, I was quite shocked actually at the time that the mainstream media didn't pick up on this story, because it affects all journalists. And it is such an important principle of our democracy. And we need to hold on to that, because if journalists don't have privilege, it means then that people will be afraid to report wrongdoing to them, and there's no way of investigating it or getting it out there. So, just speaking generally then, I feel that in recent weeks that I needed the protection of a solicitor. So I was also travelling to Dublin today to have a meeting with my solicitor on this very point. So getting back then to today's proceedings in the High Court, Judge Reynolds actually, and I think she said it was utterly reprehensible what was happening on social media, and they were the words she used, utterly reprehensible. Now, rightly or wrongly, I felt that perhaps that conversation that was going on may have been directed at me. Perhaps it wasn't, and I may be overreacting. Now, the outcome of today is that counsel for KBC, Rossa Fanning, reported that on Wednesday, Aidan Devlin arrived at the McGann's home with 21 men to secure the property on behalf of the bank. Just excuse me. Excuse me, sorry about that interruption. So he arrived on Wednesday with 21 men to secure the property on behalf of the bank, and among the men was somebody to install an alarm, somebody to do fencing, somebody to change the locks, and so on. And retired Garda Kevin Taylor came from behind the house, and then a conversation ensued, and the bottom line was that it was decided not to inflame the situation, and the Gardaí and the men present then decided to leave. And Judge Reynolds has directed, or I'm not great now on reporting using the correct legal words, but basically in layman's language, she has given until Sunday evening at 6 o'clock for anybody in the house to leave it. And if not, they will be in contempt of court and they can be arrested and brought before her. She is satisfied that the McGanns did not return to their home, and therefore she's satisfied that they are not in contempt of court. Now, broadening this out, the Master of the High Court, Edmund Honohan, in a judgment last week that involved Crematorium, which is a vulture fund, spoke about how difficult it is for people when it comes to accessing justice in the courts. And this is what he actually said, and you can see it on your screen. It is a matter of concern to me that litigants seeking recognition and enforcement of constitutional rights of a personal nature, including due process, have to fight tooth and nail, while the world of business, and I think by that he means the banks, the world of business has no apparent difficulty when accessing property rights. Even when it comes to difficulties of legal procedures after they suffer a knockback in the Court of Appeal, it appears they have the government on speed dial, and amending legislation is never a problem. This is not equality before the law. So the Master of the High Court is actually the gatekeeper. When the banks lodge documents to repossess properties, he has to scrutinise those papers before they're passed on then for listing in the High Court. And in that judgment, excuse me, in that judgment and in other judgments, he has said that some of the papers that are coming before him from the banks are not in order. And what he's saying there is that ordinary people, when they are dealing with banks repossessing their properties, that really it is not a level playing pitch. And I suppose this is a point now that I'm going to raise with Margaret Hanrahan. Margaret, you've had a long-standing battle with ACC Bank. Would you agree with the Master of the High Court there that you have to fight tooth and nail?
Absolutely, 100%. And everything he says is the truth. And there's no hope in kind of lay litigant have the paperwork. He doesn't even understand it. But I'm just going back to you there. You were a spectator in the court today. Imagine if you were a defendant and have the barrister or senior counsel tell you that you shouldn't be there, whatever. Could you imagine how that would defray you from even explaining your situation to court? The court is like a living hell. You know, they talk about jail. I said that last week. They talk about debt. Until you're in it, you don't know. And what I'd be pleading tonight is the Master is not actually heard. You know, that is written, but it'll go over the head of the High Court because the Master is only a paper chaser. But when it gets into the commercial side of it, it goes down to the High Court judge. If the best man wins, the best boxer wins in any organisation, the best bank will win, and that's the end of that. But what I would like to say is you are there today to represent, to bring back the news and tell us the real story of what goes on and the intimidation. Well, if you're intimidated before you start, how can you plead your case? The best person in the world couldn't plead their case if you're intimidated. And the Master is absolutely 100% to help you.
Now, I have to say that I was not there to bring back news to the McGanns because I've absolutely no idea where they are. And I most certainly wasn't there to bring back news to to anybody else. I was there purely to report on what was actually happening in the court, to get out, I suppose, how I see it. Because what I have noticed in all of this is that there is a press release prepared for the media, and the media then just print this or broadcast it. And I've always noticed, not just in the Stroketown case, but in other cases, it's always framed in a way to make the bank look good and to make the person who's losing their property look bad. So I was there as a journalist, and it is my right as a journalist to be there to report on what is happening. And I felt, yes, as you say, I felt extremely, well, I wouldn't say intimidated. No, I wasn't intimidated. That would be the wrong word. But I felt that if I wasn't the strong person that I am, and I would have just been coward. Now, somebody said to me this evening, Anna, why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through so much torture and torment? And the reason why I'm doing this is because this is no longer about the McGann case. This is about what is actually happening in Ireland. And this is about due process. This is about the kind of Ireland for our children and our grandchildren. And to me, this is an issue of justice. We have to speak out about what is happening. To me, I come from it, not with my head, but with my heart. To see an elderly man like David McGann pegged out on the side of the road on the 11th of December 2018 with his trousers torn and his legs all bloodied. And then to see him, or I didn't see him, but to hear reports of him crying last night in the spills of rain. It was last Friday night this happened. We went out live last Friday night, and at this time. And it was later on then at 12:30 that it's reported by somebody who was there that went to help them to pack their stuff that he was crying in the spills of rain, saying goodbye to his cats. And my concern and our concern last week was COVID restrictions. I know that they made a few phone calls and nobody would take them in because it would be in breach of COVID rules. So they had huge difficulties trying to find some place to go last Friday night, from 9:30 onwards. So Margaret, can you tell me, what was it like for you in the courts?
In fairness, when we went to the Masters Court, he was very supportive and very, very supportive. But now they're trying to get you out of the Masters Court. You mean there's a time there where the Master was nearly going to be suspended because he was giving the lay litigants so much help. And the help was telling us to go and get our paper. He was very serious about getting our paper right, because once you go down to the judges, you have a 5-minute hearing. If 5 minutes is the maximum, any Monday morning you go in, it's a 5-minute hearing, between 5 and 15 minutes, and they'll say how long it'll take. And the barrister from the other side will stand up and say, 5 minutes, max 15. Now, no one can hear a case. You would hardly hear a confession in 5 minutes. But if anyone wants to see what goes on in the High Court, they need only go up any Monday morning. You'll see 100 people inside in the court 3 where you were today, and within 10 minutes, within a whole morning at 1 o'clock, they'll have got rid of 100 people on a 5-minute job, because the people don't realise it's a 15 max is all you can hear. Your whole case is heard in 15 minutes. Who could bring their case out in 15 minutes? And it is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it is open to the judges to say, let mediation come in here, no matter who pays for it. And if mediation comes in, at least everybody will be heard. Like, there's two terrible innocent people altogether involved here in the McCanns. Surely to God, their voice should have been heard, regardless of who owed the money or who didn't owe the money. But the story hasn't been told. The whole history of what went on there hasn't really been told enough. Did the judge even never hear of it? Should the McCanns would be too afraid to say anything, like myself. But as I went along, I got a little bit better as I went along. And thanks be to God, I can only say, for the help I got. And for the help I got in the High Court, that we won the judgment. We didn't get the judgment in the judgment proceedings. It was sent to full plenary, and that's where you need to go to have your case fully heard out. But there should be some mechanism in before anyone gets to court that a judge or anybody says mediation has to be brought in here. Everyone's side of the story must have been told who was brought in, who was wrong, who was right. At the end of the day, everyone gets fair play then.
Okay, so I don't think we have anything more to add, Margaret, to what we've already said.
I have just one thing, Ted.
Yes.
Just mind. I would just say if there's anybody in any worried about anything tonight, either contact you or contact me. We don't really need to know your business, but a problem shared is a problem saved. And don't sit tomorrow morning and thinking, you could be facing, we're all going to face this high jump again come January or February. Let me tell you that. And now is the time to put a little bit of a note together. Let it be anonymous. Send it to Anna or send it to me. You have our addresses. And get the conversation going and see, can we get a bit of mediation going? Because we don't want anyone to, I certainly do not want to face anything like what I faced in 2011. I was so upset, even thinking about what Donald McCann's, it might as well have been here in my own yard. So the last thing I'll ask tonight is if anybody has a problem, put it on a piece of paper, send it to us, just leave us a number. It can be anonymous. We don't want your name and address, but at least share the problem. Let somebody know that you're suffering. That's, we have everything for mental health. We have no one to share problems for banking. So I don't know what groups are around there. The hub is there. That thing's there. But please contact somebody. Don't sit in silence and don't live in hope that it's going to go away, because it's not. Thanks, Anna.
Yes, and thank you so much, Margaret. For those of you who have just joined me, I reported on what actually happened today in the High Court in relation to the eviction in Strokestown. The McGann family have left their home. Judge Leonie Reynolds is satisfied that they are in compliance with her court order, her High Court order to vacate their property, but it would appear that there is, or there may be, some people in the McGann's house, and she has issued an order that they must vacate the house by Sunday at 6 o'clock. And the case is due for mention at 2 o'clock next Tuesday, and then there's a hearing next Friday at 2 o'clock. And the other issue that I raised is the privilege, is journalists' privilege, and that is under attack. I suppose quickly recap that Emmett Corcoran had to hand over his phone because of his coverage of the eviction. He had to hand it over to the Gardaí. It resulted in a High Court case, and the judgment was that the Gardaí were operating within the law in taking his phone and going through it. And that is a really, really, really serious matter, because if journalists lose their privilege, then people are going to be afraid to report wrongdoing to a journalist. And I am really shocked that mainstream media did not cover that story to any great extent, and it actually applies to them. And I suppose, finally, as Margaret says, there is a lot of evictions coming down the line. Because of COVID, people have missed the repayments on their mortgages. Business owners and farmers have missed their repayments. And in missing their repayments, then the banks can call in those loans. And I know that it was reported in the media some time ago that there is an avalanche of evictions coming down the line. So it beholds all of us to actually take a stand on this issue of evictions. And you can do that by sharing this media and getting word out there. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us, and I promise to keep you updated if it's a matter of a very, very sensitive nature, which it was on Tuesday, I won't report on it. But as soon as I feel that I am at liberty to report on it, I will report on it, and I give you that guarantee and that assurance. So if you don't hear from me live, there's nothing happening, or there could be something of a very sensitive nature happening. And so until we meet again, have a wonderful weekend. Bannock de Orif Galer, Ihawa.
Good night.